Yeah, it's pretty miserable. And it is, well, just one frame of reference. I mean, I just turned 65. I got a friend in Haiti. We work together really closely. He's, if not my age, a little younger, but not much. So he goes all the way back to Duvalier. And I just asked him, I said, you know, how do you measure the last, whatever, 6 decades of history? He said, this right now is the worst it's ever been. So frame of reference is pretty bad. And that's going through an awful lot. That's going through an earthquake and, all these different periods of ups and downs. But he said it's just a daily struggle now because of the gangs and the way they've kind of locked down everything. So that's, the short-term frame of reference. The rest of it all, it's a little bit like, and you don't want to just blame the international community for everything. And I think that's actually not a good move for Haitians because whatever's happened has happened. A lot of times you talk to Haitians and you get a history lesson, and I say, I got the history. We got to move on. Let's see where we go from here. But it's a society they're actually very skilled in a lot of ways. They used to have a corner on the market of the baseball industry back in the 60s and 70s and made all the world's baseballs. Incredibly talented artisans, and that sounds, quaint, but there's actually a lot of that has been that they had, great factories for textiles, kind of a easy place to do textiles when things are stable. Again, a very hardworking, talented population. They flourish everywhere they go. So there's, it's not the people, it's the system. And it is a system that internal to Haiti, not just because of us, has been very predatory. A great divide between the country and the city, which is another set of problems. But lots of potential. We didn't do them any favors in a couple of places. We made them kill all their pigs at one point because we were afraid of some kind of swine flu or something, and they never recovered. So you had this really kind of important part of their protein and their agriculture that never ever recovered. There's a lot of bad policies that they came up with themselves, but we again didn't help. We kind of destroyed their rice industry at a certain. And then we embargoed them. You got to really think about some of these embargoes. We had a short-term political objective during the coup period. So in the early 90s, we're trying to get them back on track without intervention. At some point, you got to ask yourself, maybe an intervention would have been less costly to everybody. But we pretty much wiped out their industrial base in the 90s with the embargo. They never really recovered from that either. So it's not to blame everything on us, and they certainly could have done better recovering from some of this on their own, but we haven't done them any favors. So it's been a real grind agriculturally, industrially. It's just really, and they've never quite found their footing. I will say this, it's amazing to me that the tenacity.
Well, it sounds like we keep tripping them a little bit.
Yeah.
It's not just that they don't find their footing, it's that their biggest and most powerful neighbor keeps pushing them down.
Yeah. Yeah. That is fair. And then times we could have been helpful, not always the right thing. There was a big debate, and that is when I was there in the 90s, and it's a great debate, and I think it's one we need to have more frequently. It came up again when I was in Iraq, and we really railed over this. But there's a question about, in a country that's so battered, and we're trying to get them back on their feet, do we run them through a neoliberal reform program, or do we just get people back to work? Get to the neoliberal stuff later, but we've done this a few places, and I think Haiti, it was a huge mistake. There was a lot of people at the time that I wasn't in that field. I was doing security and justice, but I remember Robert Oakley, a pretty famous ambassador, that was writing about this at the time. He said, they need jobs right now, and we need to get to political stability first, and then you can do some of this other stuff. The model that came up later. When I was in Iraq, it was really interesting because I remember Ambassador Bremer was arguing, no, we got to get the Iraqis to a proper neoliberal framework and cut all the state-owned enterprises and get their economy righted, and then private sector will come in and run wild, and everybody will have jobs. And all of us in the field. I was in Al Anbar, and Petraeus is up in the north, Odierno's up in somewhere, Dempsey's there. We had the whole future leadership of the U.S. military there, and everybody just said, "You got to be kidding! We need jobs. We have got young men running around with guns, and they will either shoot people or we'll put them to work." But So anyway, but we did that in Haiti. They crushed them through a neoliberal kind of program, and it was Aristide fought against it. He had a lot of bad decisions, a lot of bad inclinations, but I think that might have been one where he was absolutely right. So that period when we could have, in my opinion, favored jobs first, got people to work, even make work stuff infuse into the economy, that probably would have bought the political stability to then get to some of the other stuff later. That was kind of the Hungarian program. And it was interesting in Iraq that somebody, I think it was Bremer himself, pointed to Hungary as the example. I said, I'm on loan from the embassy in Hungary. I'm living there now. And I can tell you that is not what they did. They're the darling of the transitional economies of Eastern Europe, but mainly because they took 4 years under their first post-communist government, and they stabilized the political situation while they left the economy alone. And then they went through the Bokros plan and did the reforms. So anyway, I think we have, we get in a hurry. We want to rush through it. We want the private sector in there. We don't want to spend all this money. And then on the back end, we end up spending billions on security where we could have bought ourselves out of it at pretty low cost doing some smarter stuff.
I mean, and Haiti's almost a special case in that it's very small. I mean, you would think that how much money would it really have cost?
It's modest. Again, people, it's so funny to me because we throw these figures around. Well, we spent billions of dollars. You start adding it up, prorating it across the population, prorating it across whatever decades we're talking about. It's not that much money. It's pretty modest in the end. And again, if you start adding up the balance sheet of what we then spend on security missions that might not have been necessary. There's probably we've been in our own way a lot, and there's been some things that would have been probably easier to do a different way.
So what does the imposition of a top-down neoliberal order look like in Haiti? What are you doing instead of providing people jobs?
Well, it's cutting all the state-owned industries and trying to attract the private sector, but again, without always the incentives to do that. Fiscal monetary policies that would be hard on people, even on food security sometimes. The whole package that comes in with a strong IMF program.
So it's like the International Monetary Fund comes in, cuts a huge loan, and then country is slowly eaten alive by trying to pay back that loan over the next, however many decades. That kind of classic.
Yeah, the loan, but the loan would be actually the least of the problems. It would be all the conditions that the loan comes with, and reduce the size of government. It's reasonable stuff. So are you ready to throw people out of work from state-owned enterprises that are inefficient? Are you ready to throw people out of work from all these different, for example, the security forces? I mean, it's another place where it's really kind of acute. They demobilized the army. That's a whole nother issue on security. Aristide was afraid of a coup, justifiably. He'd already had one, and he was afraid of another one. So he disbanded the army. Well, now you got all these guys running around without work that are also armed and everything else. There's not an easy answer to this and we're going to go through this again with the gangs because we're going to have to do a demobilization program for these gangs. And it's a real kicker because the people are looking at this and saying, look, these are the guys that wrecked our country, and now they're getting better jobs than me. You got to be kidding. But absent that, they're going to continue to be predators on society. So it's a hard thing. Nobody has an easy answer to that. But in the short term, throwing out all these guys out of work. So, it's fiscal monetary policy that makes things harder, exchange rates and everything else. And then it's again, kicking people out of work from state-owned enterprises, from security forces, from government. Those are the kind of things that I think leaving some of that alone for a bit, on medical care and all the rest, it's expensive to do that through the state. But if that's going to produce that short-term stability, probably a longer transition is a better answer. Again, the security forces are where it's really acute.
War never changes.
That's all for this teaser, Angry Planet listeners. If you liked what you heard here, you can listen to the whole thing right now by going to angryplanetpod.com. $9 a month will also get you some bonus articles and a commercial-free version of the mainline show, as well as every single bonus episode we've ever done. We've got some really exciting things coming this month. We'll be excited to have you along for the ride. We will be back tomorrow with a full-length conversation about conflict on an angry planet that's for everybody, and is also about Haiti from a Haitian.